protect themselves. Because maybe bad guys will carry it. Well, the FBI did a study. 90% of criminals that carry a gun, they're not carrying a registered gun.
Yeah.
They're carrying a stolen gun. If you outlaw guns, the only people that have guns are outlaws.
Well, and it's a good point. The gentleman who is accused of the murder of the United Health CEO created a ghost gun off a 3D printer. No registration. There was no background check. That is exactly what a lot of people are afraid of, is that a person can just manufacture a weapon, plus, in his case, a suppressor. I mean, that whole thing is just unnerving to me. And then he was shot in the back as he's just going into a conference. The whole thing.
Yeah, I found it so off-putting, though, that people are treating this guy like Robin Hood.
Oh, my gosh.
I always have a burner shield in my backpack because you never know when you're going to be in that situation. And, like insurance, it is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
And there are far too many people who have been in that case. You talked a moment ago about the growth of the company, and I was reading, the growth has been exponential. I mean, it has been almost staggering. It's surprising you can keep up with the demand, because you were selling like $1 million a year worth of product a few years ago. That's almost your daily sales.
Yeah, we announced last week that on Black Friday, we sold more than $1 million of product, only to be broken on Cyber Monday, when we sold 1.4 million. And then 2 days ago, we announced that for the quarter, we took $28 million of orders. But as you said, back in 2019, 924,000 was our annual sales. So it is clear, Governor, that we are striking a responsive chord. There is a void in the market that we are filling, and it's as much for gun owners as for non-gun owners. So 65% of our sales are to gun owners. Now, none of these gun owners are giving up their guns, but they want something further down on the continuum of force. You talk about if somebody came into your house. Well, if you use your lethal firearm, first off, you're not wearing your hearing protection. You know that you're going to be temporarily deaf after you shoot this. That bullet can go through a wall. It could kill people that it's unintended. On the other hand, if you start with a non-lethal weapon like the Byrna, and you end up having to pull out your lethal weapon, when you go to court, I would love to defend that case, to go in front of the jury and say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my client chose less lethal first. He researched less lethal. He trained with less lethal. And it was only when there were so many assailants, or they kept coming, that he was forced to resort to lethal force. Nobody would convict you. So we think that not that our gun replaces firearms, it augments firearms.
And I think that's a great way to look at it. Well, I love American stories. I love success stories. This is an American success story, but I especially love it because it's making people and their families safer and more secure.
Nomination. I could not think of a better person for this position.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about it, but it does mean I won't get to have these kind of conversations.
I'll come over and visit you in Israel.
I look forward to that. Well, Bryan Ganz, so good to have you today, and I want to just say good luck going forward in making our country safe again.
And welcome to Nashville. Reports say Americans have been living with the same income they've had since 2020. Give or take a percentage point. Well, if you add in inflation, it's been hard for many people to make ends meet. But as I watched election results roll in, I saw everyday citizens, the farmers, the businessmen, the people in so many towns across our nation coming together to say, that's enough. I'm tired of paying higher prices on food and gas. I want leaders with common sense. Well, it filled me with a tremendous sense of thankfulness, standing side by side with those Americans. The election results have provided a sense of hope for our nation's financial future. And while it'll take a bit for our wallets to feel the changes, knowing that a new team who understands how to drive the economy is on the way in has already made a big difference in consumer confidence. Listen to this example of what the president-elect has accomplished even before he gets back to the White House.
Today, I'm to announce that SoftBank will be investing $100 billion in America, creating 100,000 American jobs at a minimum. And he's doing this because he feels very optimistic about our country since the election. And many other people are also coming in with tremendous amounts of money.
Well, $100 billion investment is huge, but it shouldn't come as a surprise given that Donald Trump spent his life in the business world. And now he's got two of the most successful entrepreneurs of this decade at his side, Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Business owners and the Wall Street money managers do best when they see a steady hand on the wheel, and their confidence translates into more jobs, a better income, and a more satisfying standard of living. But what's important to remember in all of this is that our financial security ultimately doesn't come from governments or politicians or the stock market. It may be expressed through those people in places, but ultimately our security comes from God. God has blessed America in so many ways, and our prayer is that he'll continue to have mercy on us and bless us again. The changes we see and the stability we experience aren't just because of new policies or leaders, they're expressions of God's grace. Good leaders need wise counsel. And tonight we're fortunate to have one of the men who the president-elect gets advice from. He's Steve Moore, the Heritage Foundation economist and a longtime advisor to Mr. Trump. Steve, welcome back to our show.
Alan, thanks so much for having me. Merry Christmas.
Well, Merry Christmas to you. It's hard to know where to start since there's so much to tackle. But tell us what has happened already that's being done simply in anticipation of Donald Trump heading back to the White House.
Well, Alan, I've never seen anything quite like it in my 40 years of covering policy and politics in Washington, where a presidential candidate comes in, wins the election, and it's almost as if he's already president. You know, he won't be president for another 3 or 4 weeks, and yet he's clearly taken command of Washington. He had this amazing announcement the other day of a $100 billion investment by a major Japanese company here in the United States, and Trump was very funny. He said, "Well, can you invest $200 billion?" You know, so the guy never quits, and he is a walking billboard for America. He did say that there will be many more companies that are going to be following suit and investing in the United States. You know, you haven't seen Joe Biden much in the media, have you? But you see Donald Trump every single hour, and he's off to a great start. By the way, there is a new Donald Trump. By the way, you know, I've worked with him, you know, for 8 years, and for him for many of those years. And, you know, when he first came in, you know, there was a kind of rough edge to Trump, but now there's a good Trump. You know, he's confident, he's calm, he's in command without, you know, acting up. And I think that's one of the reasons his approval rating is higher today than it's ever been.
You said something very interesting recently that caught my attention. You said that voters everywhere, here and abroad, are going to demand common sense, Trump-like policies in their own countries. The next line was even better. You said, and I quote, "I wouldn't want to be Russian President Vladimir Putin or Chinese President Xi Jinping or French President Emmanuel Macron or Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau right now. The Trumpians are coming for you." Can you explain that a little further?
Yeah, well, thank you. I had fun with that column, and I really meant it. I mean, I think that Trump isn't just popular here in the United States. He's popular all over the world, especially with, you know, working class people who want to see hope in their life and want to be listened to and don't want to be ignored by the elite and out of touch and arrogant politicians. And so, what I said in that article that you're quoting from is that I think you're going to see a Trumpian revolution all over the world, where in Britain and Germany and France and Russia and many of the South American companies and Korea, I think you're going to see people just say, we're fed up with these people. The governed are revolting against the governors. And I think you're going to see Trump-type candidates all the world. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you've been following it all, Ellen, what's happening in Argentina. But Argentina has elected a free market libertarian as their president. He's been in charge now for about a year and a half. I'm talking about Javier Milei, and he is so popular, and he's turning around the economy. He's taking a hatchet to the budget there, and he says that he hates big government, he hates the state, and he's popular in Argentina. So the two most popular politicians in the world today are Donald Trump and Javier Milei.
Well, in your years in Washington, dating back to Ronald Reagan, The number of pages of regulations in the Federal Register has doubled from 50,000 to 100,000.
Yes.
I remember when recently the Biden White House said it was considering some regulations on gas stoves. That hit a nerve. How much of that nonsense is going to go away after Trump takes office?
I think that Trump is going to hit the ground running like he's Secretariat out of the gate. I think he's going to, on the first few hours when he's president, back in the Oval Office, is going to start signing executive orders that reverse a lot of the crazy things that happened under Joe Biden. We're going to produce more energy. We're going to get rid of a lot of these ESG preferences laws. We're going to, as you just said, repeal the idea that you have to buy the car that the government wants you to buy. So these EV mandates, I think, are going to be eliminated. People are sick of the government telling them what they can do.
Well, let's take a short break. We'll have plenty more time with Steve Moore as soon as we come back. You can join this conversation with an email if you like. We read them all, and we read many of them on the air. We truly welcome your thoughts. We'll be right back. Even with Republican Congress, and is it enough to turn things around for the better?
Well, that's a good question, Alan, and I wish I could tell you that Republicans are going to be the savior. But, I've lived through many Republican presidents, Republican Congresses, and, I hate to tell you this, but Republicans sometimes are just as spendthrift and eager to spend your money as the Democrats are. So I can't sit here in good conscience and tell you, oh, everything's going to be fine now that Republicans are in charge. I think you need leadership. Trump is going to have to really lead and push these Republicans because, look, politicians love to play Santa Claus, right? Especially this time of year. They love to pass out the goodies. And it's, of course, our money, your and my money, and all the people watching this show, they spend our money. They're so generous with it, aren't they? And so that's what's caused our $37 trillion national debt. And yes, I think Joe Biden was incredibly financially responsible, but the Republicans love to spend money too. So it's Trump's going to have a tough time convincing people to cut spending. But I think this idea of this DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that's now being run by people like Vivek Ramaswamy and people like the founder of Tesla and Elon Musk. It's going to be fantastic. They're going to be able to find hundreds of billions of dollars of savings. I mean, my God, we have programs that nobody even knows what they do, for goodness sake, Al. We got programs that date back to before World War I. We keep spending money on these things. Nobody knows what they do, why they're necessary. You've got 56 different job training programs. I mean, none of this makes any sense. You've got only 10% of the federal workers working 40 hours a week in the office. I mean, there's so much bureaucracy and blob, and there's so much fraud in the payments. Hundreds of billions of dollars of fraudulent payments. Hundreds of billions. I said billions, not millions. I mean, we're spending money like it's candy in Washington.
Trump's adversaries tried to diminish his support by spreading a lot of fear. As far as you know, are Social Security and Medicare safe?
Oh, we're not going to cut Social Security benefits. We're not going to cut Medicare benefits. No way. But, the seniors paid into those programs. No, that's not to say but we can save money from Medicare or Social Security to get rid of the fraud. A lot of the checks go to people, they don't even live in the United States, for goodness sakes. They've got a fake Social Security number, or they've, figured out the system and how to, to get into the computers and have checks sent to them. We've got to track these people down. As I said, it's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that is being wasted or fraudulently spent. And we got to chase those people down and put them in jail and get the money back.
Well, I think almost everyone agrees that government spending needs to be cut back, and that those who work for the government need to get back to the office now that the days of COVID are long since over.
Right.
The Speaker of the House is on the case. Listen to some of his reasoning.
Someone did a little survey of how many federal employees are actually working in the office. By one estimate, it may be about 1% if you don't count the security personnel that are covering these buildings. That is absurd, and it's not something the American people would stand for.
Steve, does anyone know how many billions of dollars those empty buildings have cost to keep it open all these years?
Yeah, well, especially since COVID, a lot of the workers didn't show up during COVID, and they haven't gone back, and yet we're paying them. You know, those federal employees are very well paid too with the benefits. They get $200,000 a year in many cases, and a lot of them, you know, they since they're not showing up for work at the federal government, they're collecting that paycheck, but then they have a second job, you know, because they don't have to be at the federal office. So it is a great squandering of the taxpayer money, and we can save a lot of money on that. By the way, if they're not coming into the office buildings, why don't we sell them? Why don't we sell the office buildings and get some money?
That makes too much sense. Mr. Trump has talked a lot about creating incentives for American companies to bring their plants back to the U.S. I assume that's a good thing, but how long will it take to make a difference? And can you give us an example if you can?
So the government doesn't need to provide incentives. It just has to stop providing disincentives for companies to locate here. In other words, Trump had it exactly right when he gave his press conference last week, and he said, look, we're going to cut taxes. That incentivizes companies and factories to move back to the United States. We're going to reduce regulations. That helps bring companies back. We're going to reduce our energy costs. That, you know, brings companies back. All of these things have very profound positive incentives for companies to relocate in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Missouri, and Iowa, and California and Maine, not in, you know, Mexico, and not in you know, the Caribbean islands, and not in Africa. So we want to have as many jobs produced in the United States as possible. That helps a bit up the wages, and it makes all Americans better off. Now, Trump did say, look, he's going to give a tax break for companies that, you know, create jobs in the United States. But if it's going to be a product that's imported in the United States, we're going to put a little tax on that. And, you know, I'm a free trade guy. I believe it's important that we have free trade. But why do we disincentivize our own products? No other country in the world does that.
Well, it sounds like common sense. I'm not an economist, but you're creating an environment where it's making more sense for companies to do business in the States than elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, Donald Trump, it's so interesting you use the term common sense, because that really fits Donald Trump to a T. I mean, Donald Trump is not especially ideological. I mean, I'm very fortunate that I've worked for two of our greatest modern day presidents, Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. Reagan was ideologically conservative, and I love Ronald Reagan. I think he belongs on Mount Rushmore for what he did for our country. But Trump is not an ideological conservative, but he is a common sense businessman, and he knows how to create jobs. He knows how to make a payroll. He knows how to get rid of waste. I mean, if you've got waste in a private business, it goes out of business. So he's a no-nonsense guy. He's going to do the things that do put America first. I think we're going to make America great again. I think we're going to see a draining of the swamp in Washington, at least I hope there is, because we want to send power out to the people. You know, that's the point that we started this conversation where we were talking about Trumpism going national. I mean, international. It's a power to the to the people. It is a populist movement to take out politicians who are not listening to what the people are saying. You see what I'm saying, y'all? The politicians become so arrogant that they don't even listen to the voters anymore.
Nope.
Well, before we go, I remember when Trump was in office the last time, he pushed the Europeans to pay their agreed-to share for NATO. He doesn't seem to miss a trick. Now he's got Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg and others helping to pay for the inauguration. $1 million each, which I know it's like me picking up the check for lunch, but it's a good sign. What are they up to with this sudden need to fly their jets to Mar-a-Lago? And how does Trump see it?
Yeah, isn't it amazing? I mean, 8 years ago, a lot of these people hated Donald Trump, and they couldn't believe that he was president, and they spent the full 4 years trying to get him out of the White House on bogus charges that we know were fraudulent. Now, they seem to love Trump, and they see him as a kind of economic savior. And maybe it took 4 years of the economic craziness of Joe Biden for people to realize, hey, we need somebody like Trump back. So I never thought I'd see the day where you'd have Jeff Bezos and Zuckerberg each donating $1 million to Trump's inauguration. I think it's a wonderful thing, but it shows that what these businessmen and women are seeing is that Trump is pro-business, he's pro-American worker, and he's pro-America. And that's what a president should do. As Trump said, every country should put every a leader should put their own country first. Trump does it, and that's what every leader should do.
Steve Moore, thank you for your time today.
So good to be with you, Alan. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you.